David, just so you know, buddy, it looks like the live video may have ended on my end. But Mickey, how are you doing, buddy? Tell him, new Tri-Cities guy out there, what's going on in your neck of the woods? How are you liking AFP in general, man? How you doing?
I tell you, I really love the organization. Again, my name's Mickey Shelton. I'm the grassroots engagement director here in the Tri-Cities. I've been here for a few months, so just had the pleasure of getting to know various groups, and they're ready to work hard on some of these issues that we're going to talk about tonight.
That is what I'm talking about. We will get to our program director here back behind the scenes, David Shine Thompson, here in just a second. He is out in the Knoxville area. Give a quick rundown here as to what we're hoping to do on this program in particular, right? We have a bunch of federal stuff going on that, Tori, tell me if I'm right. I don't think we do a fantastic job sometimes of bringing everyone up to speed with where we are in federal issues. But most importantly, I think we have a fantastic ability to be able to give sort of a back-in bird's eye view of what's going on at the state legislature as well. And that's kind of the rundown of what this show is going to be, is starting a little bit federal top level, giving everyone ways that you can take action to influence policy that's currently going on right now, coupled with ending the show with what's going on at the state legislature. And let me just start here by diving headlong into H.R. 1. Mickey and I were actually just talking about this yesterday. This is an issue that is hot. It's on the tip of everyone's tongues currently. If you don't know what H.R. 1 does, it does a bunch of things. But let's start with just a few things here. It's the bill that Democrats have seemingly been trying to pass for quite some time. They're a couple years in to try and pass this same, if not very similar, piece of legislation. It would create unconstitutional restrictions on political speech. It would reduce the ability of nonprofits and other civic groups to advocate properly for their communities. It would politically weaponize the Federal Elections Commission. Our country benefits when diverse voices are heard, and H.R. 1 undermines that fundamental right of the American people. Now, listen, people's ability to freely think, speak, join other groups, and join together is a hallmark of our country and has propelled America closer to realizing her founding ideals. But H.R. 1 makes it harder by making nonprofits and groups ranging from local charities to national veteran groups. It makes it harder for them to report their supporters' personal information or in a public government database. It violates people's privacy and leaves them vulnerable to harassment. Let me go to Tori here before I give some of the Fox News headlines and everything. Tori, are you hearing anything on your end from what you're involved in on a day-to-day basis about H.R. 1 that might be interesting for some of our people?
Well, another aspect of H.R. 1, so it also federalizes our election laws. It does a lot, it makes a lot of changes to the election laws that state governments have passed. So each state currently has control over how their election laws work. It changes a whole plethora of items there. And if you didn't like the way the 2020 elections went, you are certainly not going to like H.R. 1 or giving up state power, more power back to the federal government. The other thing that we're hearing about H.R. 1 is they're starting to realize that they're probably not going to be able to push the whole thing through altogether. And so we'll see it get chopped up into little pieces, and they're just going to throw everything at the wall in different forms to see what they can get through.
Now, look, if you're joining on Facebook, we're also broadcasting live on YouTube. There's a number of different places that we're broadcasting here. Our guy out in Knoxville, Tennessee, does a fantastic job of putting us on multiple platforms. We're following all those comments. Mickey will also be posting in Facebook while we're going through this, ways that you can take action. Now, look, we're not the first organization to bring up H.R. 1. Everybody is hot about this. But I will say, Tori, I think, if I can use a term that we're all familiar with, our comparative advantage, something that Americans for Prosperity does very, very well, is give you ways to take action that goes directly to those legislators. Mickey, if you could, buddy, post in Facebook as you're watching along right now this link to that H.R. 1 letter to the legislators. And this letter really does literally go directly to your legislator, asking you to stand up, asking them to stand up and vote against H.R. 1 when this eventually gets to the Senate. Right now, just a quick update for where everybody's coming from here. We heard Tori talk about it just a second ago, but the House of Representatives Wednesday, as of last night, passed this signature voting and campaign finance reform legislation that, again, aims to expand access to polls, fight partisan gerrymandering, Fox News is telling me, and set up new public funding for congressional races. They're calling it the For the People Act of 2021, known as H.R. 1, right?
Double speak.
Say that again, Tori?
Completely double speak.
Exactly. right? But see, the reason why I said the term is to bring up the issue of how they do these things in Congress. Can you say that for a second? Go to that talk about that point for a second, Tori, about how they label these bills something entirely separate from what it actually does?
It's exactly political doublespeak. It's from 1984. They will say it's something that is the opposite. It's more of a For the Politicians Act. It's not for the people at all. It's a joke that they would even try and call it a For the People Act.
And again, if you're watching on Facebook, one of the things we're trying to do with this program here is let the commentary drive the program. If you comment on Facebook, I will see it. We'll have a dialogue. We'll start that conversation. If you comment on YouTube, we'll have that conversation. But sign this petition, click the thing, and let these people know how you feel about it. Because as Tori just said, it is certainly not for the people. It did pass the House along completely partisan lines, as you would expect, 220 to 210. And I actually heard a story today that apparently a single Democrat voted no, and then somehow changed his vote at the last minute when I don't know how that happens. We didn't realize what was going on. But a major pillar of the legislation is setting up new public financing for congressional and presidential elections to incentivize, they say, small dollar donations. This legislation, for example, would, I don't know, have a $200 donation for a House candidate that would garner a $1,200 match in public funds. So a total contribution of you paying $200 would match to $1,400. Now, obviously, Republicans are blasted by this public funding provision, and they're saying that it's a way to, say, line the campaign coffers of members of Congress. And Tori, I can already see you lean forward there. What are your thoughts?
Where exactly is this public funding money going to come from other than the taxpayers?
Yeah.
They're going to have to raise, or our national debt. So we've got our national debt, and then we've also got taxpayers who are going to foot the bill for this. So, essentially, you're forcing people to be engaged in a political process that maybe they don't want to be engaged in, and raising their taxes to support causes and individuals and candidates that they would not support otherwise.
Representative Dan Crenshaw, everybody knows him from Texas. He says, trust is everything. That's a vital lesson, not just, I think, in politics and life in general, clearly, but he goes on to say that this bill, H.R. 1, makes elections less trustworthy, not more trustworthy, right? The legislation now obviously heads to the Senate. This is a very important part of this entire story, what I'm about to say, so pay close attention here. The legislation, yes, it did pass House along partisan lines. It heads to the Senate, where there's a tough road ahead for passages. The chamber is split 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans. This legislation, because it is still legislation, as opposed to voting for a judge or a justice, would require 60 votes to advance and need GOP support. But therein lies the inevitable next question, Tori, of the nuclear option, if you will, getting rid of the filibuster. Let me just straight up ask for opinions in Facebook. If you're watching, let me know. Where do you stand on even the possibility of getting rid of the filibuster? Do you think it's a possibility? Do you think they would try something like that at all for H.R. 1?
I think they'll try. I don't know if they'll be successful. I certainly hope and pray they are not going to be successful. There's a reason that procedure, the 60 vote majority is required for substantial pieces of legislation. And, it's the way it's been done. Even when the Republicans had full control of everything, we still had the 60 vote majority that you had to pass something significant like that.
Yeah, you would think it would be, catastrophic, right? If possibly for both parties here, because it's not going to be a very long time, I suppose, before Republicans might take power back over in the Senate. And what happens then? I think the lesson was just learned just a few years back now. If we only require 51 votes for a Supreme Court justice, that's the game we're playing now, right? You would have to think they'd learn the lesson from that, but I don't know.
So can we also talk about this bailouts bill, since this is happening right now?
That's what I was going to go on to next. Yeah, go ahead with
Nancy Pelosi's, $1.9 trillion boondoggle bailout. And it's really a partisan wish list of all the things that they wanted to pack into this bill. It's probably one of the worst pieces of legislation I think I've ever looked at. But I've really got to give kudos to our friends in Wisconsin. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin used a parliamentary procedure to require the clerks to read out loud the entire 628-page bill. So as long as there are 13 Republicans present in the chamber, the clerks will continue reading this bill. You can actually see it going on. And it really highlights the fact that the majority of this funding is not actually for COVID relief. It is very much a boondoggle bailout. We've got a $350 billion fund that's going to state and local governments that have been poorly managed. You've got Tennesseans, where we are in a fiscally conservative state and we manage our budgets well here. We're going to have Tennesseans that are essentially going to be bailing out the pension systems in Illinois that have been underfunded or not funded appropriately. So it's decades of bad policy that's coming home to roost, and we're basically giving them a pass on it. And it's not because of COVID, it's because they have the political power and will to do so.
Let me tell you one quick way too. If you're watching on Facebook, if you look at the description section of these notes, there's an Evernote link, and Mickey will post this in Facebook as you're watching right now as well. Mickey, go find the free Roots campaign, specifically under that $1 trillion bailout system. I think the most effective way we can make our voice heard on this issue right now is through social media. And there's an incredible tool that a lot of people are using right now, but I actually just want to show it to everyone on the screen to let everyone know how easy this tool actually is to use. This Free Roots campaign, Mickey will post it in the comments on Facebook. You can see it on YouTube as well, wherever you're watching, even on Twitch if you're watching over there, or just click that Evernote link and you can follow it yourself. You can actually see the show notes that I'm operating off of right now. But look at this right now, how easy this is. If you click that Free Roots link, it will take you to this page, give you some good information. There's a quote from Tim Phillips, all nice and neat and put together. If you click Take Action, though, it literally will tag my senator, my representatives. It will tag them right here, a pre-written, pre-filled out message for Twitter and Facebook. It is literally that simple. You have to go down to the bottom of the screen, hit open Twitter. This is my Twitter account here. It literally fills it out for you. It fills the entire thing out for you. I'll show you right now. Fills this entire thing out for you. And then all I have to do is hit tweet. It's done. It's that simple. It tags everybody in there, all neat, nice little format. But if we can get a momentum started, I think that's the most effective way to do this, because it's live, real time in their hands. These people are sitting in these meetings. Tori, tell me, they're sitting in their meetings with their phones out right now. If they get 50, 60, 5,000 tags all at once, they will recognize that immediately. Yeah.
A lot of them will actually notice. And, even if you want to send your own tweet or you want to change the words up, using that hashtag reject bailouts, that's something that I would love to see trending on Twitter tonight, especially as they are talking through what a terrible boondoggle this legislation is right now. It's going on right now. You can see it live.
And let me give just a quick breakdown before we get into some of these state bills here as well. I saw a meme going around recently, Tori, about 9% of this bill is only 9% of the bill is being used for COVID relief. And it started this very interesting conversation that I had with several people on our own Facebook pages here, where that meme came from, whether it's true or not. And it really went into the breakdown of the percentages of what's being used in this bill. So the 9% comes from this idea that only 8.5% of that 1.9 trillion goes to direct containment measures such as vaccine and testing. So, that 9% mean might be slightly misleading, but it opens up this conversation to tell you that, look, PolitiFact regarded as true that when Republicans come out and say that this bill contains unrelated projects entirely, they cite examples. $1.5 million for a bridge connecting New York to Canada, our money. $100 million spent on an underground rail project in Silicon Valley, our money. I'm never going to use that rail. I'm never going to use that rail project. $480 million for Native American language preservation and maintenance, $50 million for environmental justice grants. All told, this is coming from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. All told, about 15% of this bill goes to long-standing policy priorities that are not directly related to anything dealing with the current crisis. Obviously, 22% goes to those $1,400 personal checks. And lastly, I would say this is gross waste as well, unrelated to COVID relief. 27% of this $1.9 trillion goes to those state and local bailouts. Several states are asking for bailouts because they're just completely over-leveraged. Illinois alone, I believe, someone will have to find this data for me in a minute, but I believe they're about $44 billion in just the state alone of unfunded liabilities. Looking to the future for things like, pension plans and other stuff. But Tori, before we get to the state bills, any last word you want to say on the bailout stuff?
Reject bailouts.
Reject bailouts, that's right. Hey, one more time, watching on Facebook, click the links there, take action yourself. Let's move into some state stuff, Tori. I think this is where Americans for Prosperity really shines here. We're going to approach this in issue buckets, if you will. We're working on about 4 or 5 issues in particular: criminal justice reform, healthcare, educational freedom, economic opportunity, things like this. And there are several bills that we're following. I think we're at about the number of 15 or so. Maybe by the end of it, we'll get up towards about 20 that we're following, watching, working on, right? But starting with criminal justice reform, Tori, I think we stand on this idea that we're smart on crime, soft on taxpayers, you know? And we've been working on civil asset forfeiture for quite some time. There's 2 bills in particular I wanted to bring up tonight, one of which just passed the subcommittee and one of which is coming up in subcommittee next week. Civil asset forfeiture, for those that don't know, it's quite simply, it's an issue where law enforcement can seize your property from you, forfeit it over to the state without actually convicting you of a crime. There's a long history that starts all the way back in maritime law, but we just don't have time for that right now. But one of the issues in Tennessee in general is that we're one of only 3 states that requires a $350 bond just to show up in court, just to have an opportunity to get your stuff back, essentially. And it's not just a one-time $350 payment. It's $350 per seizure, per charge. So if someone pulls an individual over and say seizes a vehicle and a lockbox and maybe a purse, it's 3 different individual charges of $350 each, right? So that bill to remove that $350 bond just passed Civil Justice Subcommittee last week and is coming up in full Civil Justice Committee next Wednesday on the 10th. And there are ways you can take action on this as well. Again, if you want to follow the link in Evernote, Mickey will post this in Facebook. There is a petition that you can sign, an email that will go directly to these legislators asking, let's reform Tennessee's civil asset forfeiture laws. Click that, fill out the information. That email will be sent directly to the Civil Justice Committee members so they can see and hear your support. And Tori, let me just ask you, you've been at this for much longer than I have. Have you seen at all any sense of awareness or change or any type of momentum going forward with that issue in particular, civil asset forfeiture at the legislature?
I definitely see it changing over time. You know, we've made some significant strides back in 2015 with Representative Mike Carter was the bill sponsor then, because back then cash alone was grounds for seizure. So that means they didn't even have to charge you with a crime. If you just had too much cash on you, they could just take your cash. At least now you're supposed to be caught with something else illegal at the same time, or at least have a reason for them to really think that the cash was being used for something illegal. But what we found, even with that, the intention was to get rid of this bond then. The bill got through without removing the bond then. So there is a much stronger support now to get rid of that $350 bond so that, you know, innocent people can pursue getting their property back if it's unjustly taken. And then, so, you know, that was a huge piece of it from what we did back. Gosh, it seems so long ago, but even for the reforms that we're going to make and the reforms, you know, we would love to see it be criminal asset forfeiture.
Right.
We still need, and I'll just cue this up for you for the other bill that we're working on where you take action on it. And it's a transparency reporting bill, because a large part of the problem with getting rid of civil asset forfeiture is, one, helping people understand the difference between civil and criminal asset forfeiture, which we support criminal asset forfeiture, not civil asset forfeiture. We support people's constitutional rights. So we do support that side of it. But a big part of getting the legislators to act is showing them the data. And the data has been very hard to come by because we don't really know how many people are getting their stuff taken without even being charged with a crime. We know it's happening. We just don't know how much. And so, Grant, go ahead and talk about the other one.
Yeah, that's what House Bill 409 will do. Now, House Bill 409 is being brought by Chairman Lafferty. He brought this last session and will be coming up again this session. It is up in Civil Justice Subcommittee on Tuesday of this week. So again, the link that Mickey just posted in Facebook. Again, if you're watching on Facebook, there's an Evernote link in the description. Click that. You'll see the entirety of the show notes that I'm working off of right now. You can follow all of these ways to take action currently. But House Bill 409 does exactly what Tori said. Currently in Tennessee, we do not know how often civil forfeitures are ending in criminal convictions, meaning we just don't know how often when police are forfeiting people's property over to the state, they're also convicting them of a crime. That is vital information, not just to create a narrative for what civil asset forfeiture is and is not, but to give us a realistic picture on what's happening in this state. We absolutely desperately need this information so we can go talk to legislators later on and say, look, 84% of the time, you guys are taking people's stuff and you're just not convicting them. That could be incorrect statistically, but if it's near that, then man, that really gives the sense of urgency to do something about it now, right now. So again, that information Mickey just posted, it deals with House Bill 59 for the $350 bond. That's up next week in Civil Justice Full Committee on Wednesday. House Bill 409 is the reporting bill. That's up in Civil Justice Subcommittee next week on Tuesday. If you sign this letter, it goes directly to those members' inboxes. They can see how you feel about it, ask them to support both of those bills. Tori, moving to a very interesting one, and I'm just going to kind of kick this to you, see which direction you want to take it, but it's House Bill 43. People know this as the bill that would require law enforcement to get a warrant before they put cameras on your property.
So a lot of people don't realize that because of something called open fields doctrine, that law enforcement can actually put cameras up on your property, even if it's no trespassing or private property, without your knowledge nor consent, and also without a warrant. And this is something that we see as a huge problem. There's been some examples of it. I'm not going to go into details on that, but I'm sure we could probably drop the news stories in the chat at another time. But this is definitely something that we've been talking to a lot of the members about. They understand the constitutional concerns that, law enforcement should have to have a warrant to be able to do this. And so I'm feeling pretty good about it right now, but there is going to be opposition. I'll say even with emailing lawmakers, that's very helpful. The most helpful constituent communications come from people in their district. So if you're in the district of any of the lawmakers on the civil subcommittee or the criminal full committee, those are the ones that we would really love you to reach out to. And you can also call them. Phone calls, even just marking your position for or against a bill, go a really long way if you are calling from the district and you're calling your state rep. And there's ways to find out exactly who your state rep is. I'll plug the Capitol website. We have a great website at the state level where you can actually track legislation. You can see the bills, the language of the bills, where it's going next, find your representative, find their contact information, and it's all at Capitol, capitol.tn.gov, capitol.tn.gov. That will find your way there, look around. There is a lot of information available there, and it's really helpful if you're trying to follow a particular bill.
Mickey, go ahead if you could, man, in the Facebook post. Oh, you already did that House Bill 43. I see you there. By the way, if you're following along with Facebook, what you just tuned into is the Americans for Prosperity Tennessee Weekly Update. We're going over some national headlines. We're going over what's happening in the state legislature and giving everyone ways to take action right now, trying to give a backdoor view as to what really happens up there. Tori is up there definitely 2 to 3 days a week, multiple hours per day. We're talking probably 14-hour days she's working up there. So we're trying to bring this information to you. What did you say there, Tori?
I was just laughing at multiple, it's a long day. The days are very long while we're there.
But this bill in particular, this House Bill 43, right? I think people are in the mood. They have the appetite for liberty-loving bills, and this is one of those liberty-loving bills. If you have just joined in Facebook or wherever you're watching, in the description there of the show notes, you can see an Evernote link. That Evernote link will give right to the notes that I'm following right now, or just check the comments section. Mickey just posted. We call them eyeballs. They're petitions. It's for House Bill 43, and I'll show you literally, again, how easy it is to take action on some of these things, right? If you were to click that link, this is what you see. Protect Tennessee's constitutional rights. Tennessee's constitutional rights. You see this quick letter that goes to these legislators talking about Tennesseans deserve privacy in their everyday lives. The Fourth Amendment and our cultural understanding of privacy recognize that the government should not be allowed to engage in surveillance without first going through a court of law and obtaining a warrant. The Fourth Amendment told us that. You can click over here and read a little bit more if you want to. But if you fill out this basic information, and yes, that's my information, I just showed it. I don't really care. I don't live at that address anymore. If you hit send, it will go directly to those people. That is literally how simple it is. This is the website that Tori just told you all about. And I agree. It's one of the best in the entire nation, capital.tn.gov, capital.tn.gov. But that's how easy it is to take action and get your voice heard on some of these issues here. House Bill 43 in particular is one that, look, your property is your property. You should have every ability to do what you want to do on your property. And if law enforcement wants to film you on your property, they should probably have a decent reason for doing so. That's my opinion. And Tori here, we'll keep this under about half an hour, rounding out just some of the things that are happening in this week. House Bill 43, the one we just went over, that's coming up in Criminal Justice Subcommittee this next week. Okay, we have some time to work on that. It's coming up on Wednesday in Criminal Justice Subcommittee. All of the bills we're talking about tonight are moving. There's action behind them. There's stuff happening. All of the ways to take action directly target those committees. This next one, though, Tori, just passed.
Wait before you shift gears off criminal justice reform.
Okay, it's okay, yeah.
Because you left one out. So. Yeah. I just want to say this. So AFP believes an effective criminal justice system protects people, preserves public safety, respects dignity, restores victims, and removes barriers to opportunity while ensuring that equal justice for all under the law. So with that, with the part of the movement of conservative criminal justice reform, there's another bill that we've been working on, and time ran out on us last year because of COVID. And it's called Expungement for Legally Innocent. So Governor Lee did a great job last year in removing the $350 expungement fee, the state fee, in order to get your record cleared, because we know that felonies follow people. It limits their job opportunities, it limits their housing opportunities, and not everything's expungible, but smaller misdemeanor crimes are expungible and should be if you stayed out of trouble. We believe in redemption and second chances, right? So with that, people that are legally innocent, meaning their charges were dismissed, they were found not guilty, these folks still have things on their record. It doesn't just immediately get wiped away. That beforehand, they would still have to go pay the $350. So now that we've gotten rid of the state part of the fee, there was locals had to charge at least $100. So even if you were legally innocent and you wanted to clear something off of your record, you would have to go fill out the paperwork and pay $100. So what this bill does, it's House Bill 888 by Representative Curcio. It will make the process much easier for someone who's legally innocent. They just need to basically sign off on it. There is no fee involved in clearing your record if you were legally innocent. And it also expands the charges that could be expunged. Now, that part, they're going to have to work through the legislature. What we really care about is the expungements for the legally innocent. If you were unjustly charged with a crime or you were innocent in the first place, you absolutely should not have to jump through hoops and bend over backwards to clear your name.
Hey, and just some sort of inside baseball here stuff, Tori. I think that's one of the reasons why people might become members of this community, right? Living life with us together, learning about the stuff we're working on, constantly tuning back into this program is because we can share with each other, be a little bit vulnerable as well. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but some of that inside baseball stuff, Curcio in particular, Representative Curcio, these bills he carries, would it be too far to say that at least, especially in that realm of criminal justice reform, he's kind of a liberty champion for us, He's
absolutely a policy champion. So is Jeremy Faison, who's carrying the bill to stop the surveillance without a warrant. Mm-hmm. So both of those two on the House side have been longstanding champions in justice reform, conservative justice reform areas. And so we like to see them leading in that way. And it's very aligned with what AFP wants to see. And, like the short and simple phrase, being smart on crime and soft on taxpayers.
Yeah, I remember Curcio was the one last session that carried that bill for the drug-free government property zones, drug-free school zones, whatever it was. And I remember, Tori, in committee, when that was first coming up in subcommittee, they had Judge Sullivan from Chattanooga come in and tell this story about what that bill meant to him. And the idea of the bill was basically to take 1,000-foot radius of any publicly owned area, primarily schools and parks and things like that. It used to be in Tennessee, a 1,000-foot area, if you had any amount of drugs, it didn't matter, any amount of drug possession at all, it was a mandatory 15-year minimum sentence. You had to serve 15 of them, right? And there was these situations where, was it doing what it's supposed to do? Was it targeting the right people? Judge Sullivan came in and told this story about how he had this guy in his courtroom, 22-year-old kid, and he was 940 feet away from a school. And this guy ended up, I don't know, the police came into the house with an arrest warrant for somebody else totally unrelated to this guy, and had to obviously pat him down, and found a pinky fingernail size worth of cocaine. And the judge himself ended up saying that this was not a size of cocaine that he was selling at anyone. The guy was depressed and it was for personal use. He was self-medicating, right? And so he went through the whole court and everything, the trial and everything. And in Tennessee, when they give jury instructions, the judge is unable to tell the jurors the amount of time they are sentencing someone to. All they can say is, did they do it or not do it? So the jury doesn't know. They're not aware of how long they're putting someone away for. So when they came back with this verdict of guilty, because he technically had possession of drugs within that 1,000-foot radius, the judge was devastated and went back into the jury room afterwards and just interviewed the people and said, hey, listen, now that you guys have already made up your decision, if you would have known that saying guilty on that decision ended up meaning this 22-year-old kid just got put in jail for 15 years, would you have made the same decision? And this lady ended up breaking down, crying, sobbing in that room and saying to the judge, did I really just put a 22-year-old kid away for 15 years for having that small amount of cocaine? And the judge said, yeah, unfortunately you did. This is what I'm saying, Tori. Like, those kinds of stories are not publicized. You're not going to hear something on the local 6 News about this. But when Judge Sullivan comes in and says that's what Curcio's bill is meant to address, it didn't just decrease the size of the zone. It put that power back in the discretion of the hands of the judge to make the decision. He was now able to look at that situation, or could have looked at that situation and said, I don't think this bill is meant to apply to John Smith here, who wasn't selling drugs to kids, so I'm not going to put him away for 15 years.
And that was the whole point of enhancing the charges to begin with, was to really go after drug dealers and people that were selling drugs to kids or targeting schools. That was the whole point. But it grew from schools, and then it became parks and libraries and I think hospitals, and even property that a school owned, but there's not actually a school there. And, it became all these things. And it also went into people's private homes. So if someone was suffering with an addiction in their own home, not anything to do with anyone else, it would still trigger these mandatory minimums. And so that was the reason why that one criminal justice bill actually moved forward last year, because it saved taxpayers by giving the judges just that amount of discretion. The reduced costs of not incarcerating people we shouldn't be incarcerating, or automatically upcharging them for that long, saved our taxpayers $18 million a year.
See, this is what I hope people tune back into for weekly addresses like this, that we're going to try and do a weekly or bi-weekly thing with Americans for Prosperity Tennessee to bring everyone up to speed with these bills, the legislators themselves, the types of things that they're carrying, what you hear in these committee rooms, and stuff that you may just not hear on your local news as well. I think it's vitally important. It's just a lot of fun. What may not be a lot of fun to end with, however, Tori, is the one that
Hollywood handouts.
This is Tori's favorite bill for sure, is it not? This is your favorite bill. Go ahead and let them know.
So, for years, Tennessee has done this. It looked like the Lee administration was pushing back and doing less of that through the years. But here we are. There's a bill that completely expands the companies that are able to get this film tax incentive tax credit. And, it's just bad policy. It's cronyism, government picking winners and losers, because we know from the tax policy side that when government's giving special carve-outs or special tax breaks to special industries, the politically connected companies, they're the ones that are going to benefit. The average mom and pop shop that, have just been here employing people and, running their business in the state of Tennessee, they're not eligible for any of this. But if we quit doing this, if we quit giving out tax incentives the way that we have been, and we quit doing things the way that we have been, we could actually cut business taxes substantially, making Tennessee an even better place to own a business, to start a business. So this is absolutely something that, we're going to have to fight against. So I hate to hear that there's going to be more handouts, and it doesn't matter who it's for. It's still a bad deal. It's bad policy for government to be picking winners and losers. And so this is why, we're saying say no to Hollywood handouts. It's already passed the House Finance Ways and Means Subcommittee. There was not a lot of opposition to it. I've been trying to talk to them to see if there's any way that they could improve the bill if they're not going to kill the bill. But it'll be up in both the Senate Finance Ways and Means Subcommittee next week, I believe on the 9th, and then on the House, the full House Finance Ways and Means Committee on the 10th.
Yeah, and this just passed the Finance Ways and Means Subcommittee this week, on Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those days. But it just passed in Tori. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that it had a single auditory no vote. Is that correct?
No, but it was a voice vote, and people, when there's voice votes, unless someone's really gonna, make a point of it, you're not really gonna hear the no votes. So, I mean, that's just frankly, it's where we're at right now. We hope that we can kill it. We hope that the sponsors will understand that they need to come up with a better way that's not giving away Tennessee tax dollars to millionaire movie moguls. But it's bad policy, and it's extending that bad policy. And while it's not going to cost a ton of money, if you look at the fiscal note of what they anticipate it's going to cost initially with this bill, it over the years, once fully implemented, it could be $16 million. Now you just think to yourself, so we just saved $18 million by not incarcerating people that we shouldn't be incarcerating. Think of all the essential services and all the things in Tennessee that should be funded appropriately. Even funding law enforcement through a transparent budget process so they don't have to violate people's constitutional rights to fund their budgets would be another great place to start. So it's all interconnected in that way, but I would really encourage you to reach out to lawmakers and tell them to oppose stop the Hollywood handouts. This is just not something, it's bad policy from the political side of things. We've seen in Georgia, this is the kind of policy that flips red states blue. And I know we're nonpartisan and we're a nonpartisan organization, but I know a lot of the folks that are listening to us right now care about whether or not who's in charge at the state level, whether we're making sound financial decisions for our state. So I would encourage you to reach out, and I believe it's in the link also. There's an I Volunteer where you can, email your legislators and tell them to stop the Hollywood handouts.
Yeah, if you're watching on Facebook, Mickey just posted that. If you're watching this back later on, by the way, not live, you can actually follow along with the comments live fed in and follow Mickey's post there as well. It'll bring you to that letter that will go directly to legislators, letting them know how you feel about it. And I literally do mean it. It's not just gathering information and possibly going somewhere later. As soon as you hit submit, it goes directly to a legislator's inbox for them to see right now. I mean, they could pick up their phone and see it. That's exactly how it works. It's a fantastic thing. Look, David said in Facebook here as well, and I think this fully encompasses where I'm at, Tori. He just said, ugh, film tax credits are the worst. And you're talking about the money being spent. That is a massive problem. But the other side of this as well, there's a moral component, moral component to this issue as well, of using my money to fund something I'm probably never going to see. I'm never have anything to do with. I mean, I don't even like the idea. Look, even if I did like the idea, I didn't have any say-so in using my money for that stuff to go on. And I think David's response here is just like, ugh. Like, this is what I could see. I imagine David just, film tax credit. Like, that's where it's at. That's exactly what this bill would end up doing here. On the way out of this program, by the way, Kelly said in Facebook too, bad policy indeed. Thumbs up on that one. If you enjoy the stuff we're doing here, we're going to do a weekly update. We're going to bring you the live stuff. We're going to bring you what we're doing up at the Tennessee Legislature, sort of the behind the scenes look with the bills we're following, the legislators, the relationships we have, all the stuff that you're probably not going to be able to get anywhere else. But if you like some of this stuff and you want to be able to train up to do it on your own, Mickey, one more time, buddy. I saw you posted up there before. Our guy Mickey out in the Tri-Cities area, if you happen to be watching out there, is hosting an incredible grassroots training. And it's not your typical run-of-the-mill grassroots training stuff. There's some foundational elements, but it really dives deep into how to build these relationships with legislators, how to get meetings. What do you do once you have the meetings? What to say, what not to say, how to conduct yourself, how to do proper research, what the most effective means of delivering an argument are. It goes through the entirety primarily relying upon Tori's decades worth of experience in that building to deliver the most effective way to be effective in front of your legislators. Again, Mickey, post that up there, sign up for it. I'll be involved. David will be involved. Mickey will be involved. Tori will be up there for a day as well. And again, we'll be doing these posts, these videos every week. And on the way out, if I can put our boy David Thompson on the spot here a little bit to unmute his mic. I wasn't able to introduce him at the beginning of the show, but Grant Henry, Middle Tennessee Grassroots Engagement Director. Everybody knows Tori Venable. She's our state director. Our new guy, Mickey, he introduced himself at the beginning of the show. He's out in the Tri-Cities area. But David Shine Thompson, but if you could, introduce yourself, let them know what you do out in the Knoxville area for him.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Thompson, and I am the Grassroots Engagement Director in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we have a great time at our office in the downtown Market Square area. We're down there all the time. You can email me anytime if you want to talk about any of these things, you know, in person. If you live in the Knoxville area or even the surrounding areas, you can email me at dthompson@afphq.org. That's dthompson@afphq.org. And I'd love to meet you, and you can join our grassroots family. As you can tell, there's all kinds of great stuff going on here in Tennessee, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
And as everything you're seeing on the screen now, by the way, too, all these graphics and images and the intros and the outros, that's all David's handiwork. So big hand up to you, man. We appreciate it. And as David, go ahead, Tori.
I was going to say one more thing. Like, you know, this is the first one that we've done. And if you're watching this and you've got some feedback, what did you like? What did you hate? Who did you like? What do you want to hear more about? These are all helpful things for us as we try and hone in on this and make this the most valuable time spent that you're engaging with us online. So please share your feedback with us, and we will do our best to make this entertaining and informative.
Yeah, absolutely. Message us directly on the AFP Tennessee page. We will message you back. And again, we really want to make this an interactive, dialogue-driven community. We want to live life with each other. We want to grow with each other. I want to be a little bit vulnerable with each other. I want to get to know y'all through a digital space. I want it to be too hokey, but we're in Tennessee, so why not? Let's be hokey. I want to create a little digital family so we can do all this stuff together, right? So on the way out, as David's queuing up our outro music here, there was a great quote that I'm sure it was Thomas Jefferson or some founding father, and I've tweaked a little bit to say, like, we don't have a constitutional republic in this country. We have a constitutional republic of those that participate, right? That's what I'm hoping we can deliver here. Information, dialogue, getting to know each other, and also adding to all that ways that we can participate in our own constitutional republic. With that being said, my name's Grant Henry. For Tori Venable, Mickey Shelton, David Thompson, signing off tonight. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next time.